Welcome to Season 3 of Voices of Australia, where we embark on a journey through the heart of social cohesion. In this thought-provoking podcast series, we delve into the diverse tapestry of Australian society, weaving together the stories, experiences and perspectives that contribute to our nation's unity. From conversations with community leaders and experts in their fields, to personal narratives of everyday Australians, Voices of Australia Series 3 explores the challenges and triumphs of fostering social cohesion in a dynamic and ever-evolving society. Whether you're a seasoned advocate for social harmony or just beginning to explore the nuances of Australian identity, this podcast invites you to listen, learn and engage in the vital dialogue surrounding social cohesion. Today's guest is Diana Nguyen. Diana describes herself as a creative entrepreneur. She's a comedian, a writer, a personal branding consultant, a theatre maker, an MC and a performer. She is known as #DadsingDiana and hosts the SnortCast live interview and podcast show. In 2021, she was awarded the overall Asian Australian Influential Asian Australian Leadership Award, and she has contributed to Alice Pung's book Lorinda to co-adapt it for stage, where it was world premiered at the Melbourne Theatre Company in August 2022. She's currently writing Fee and Me Too, an 8-part TV show with Screen Australian development funding and produced by Northern Pictures. She was the co-creator and executive producer of Fee and Me TV, the first ever Vietnamese Australian family comedy series, which was released in June 2019. And she's appeared on The Project, ABC Q&A, Fox Footy and Friday Front Bar, and we're delighted to have her with us today. Diana, it's just delightful to have you here. I understand that next week you're going to take part in the Melbourne Comedy Festival, yes. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And I really hope that it's just a great success. I'm sure it will be.
Yes.
It is such an interesting area, though, comedy and humour when it comes to thinking about social cohesion. And I wonder if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about your journey and how you've got to here.
Yes.
And whether or not you think that has had an impact on how you feel, whether you have a sense of belonging within Australia,
yes,
within Melbourne.
Well, I've told people that I started comedy when I was bullied in primary school, because that was my way of integrating and making friends and being like, look at me, I'm the clown. You can't pick on me because I'm the funny one.
Yeah.
You know, people love funny people. Like, people are very attracted to funny people. So I realised I grew a superpower very early, and that was my way to be around people who liked me. And over the time, I've been very fortunate that I've been able to use comedy in my work, and I do say that the arts is the reason why I'm still alive, because it allows me to breathe, it allows me to reflect, and allows me to give joy to people. And it gives me immense joy when I can see people laugh or snort with me. As you've already noticed, I do snort a fair bit. I've been very lucky that in my work, like Fee and Me, my web series about growing up with a Vietnamese mother, we've taken it all around the world, and people have gone, we love this story. And that uses comedy in trauma. Because growing up with a Vietnamese parent isn't easy when they haven't processed their trauma. And so using comedy, we share what it's like to grow up in a suburb and grow up in a house with a person who has very high expectations. Like, I was meant to be a doctor.
Of course.
No, but I didn't. Still disappointing my mother. But over the time, I've seen that for me, doing comedy was to make people laugh. But I realised that it is part of my DNA. Like, it feeds who I am.
So you didn't feel compromised when you were developing that superpower? You didn't feel like...
I didn't know. I didn't have that awareness as a child. I just knew this protected me.
And it worked.
It worked, and it now pays me dividends. Like, it's wonderful. But yeah, with my stand-up now, I've seen my comedy as more like a storytelling. And, I talk about in my comedy how for many years I've worked in the industry, in film and TV, and I've only got 20-second roles.
Yeah.
But now as a stand-up comedian, I can stand on stage for 50 minutes and I can own my story, and I can make people laugh or cry or make people just listen. And I feel I'm so grateful that superpower that I've had, I've kind of evolved it into the way I want it to be. And I've kind of like taken charge of my destiny, if that's the right word.
Yeah.
Like I've gone, this is who I am, and I'm going to make a salary from it, which is wonderful because I'm proving my mother wrong.
Oh, but it's fantastic. Your mother is quite a feature throughout your stories
Yes.
and your the comedy that you do.
Yes.
Is that so what was that experience like, I guess, for your mum
Yes.
here, having somebody who was developing that particular superpower?
Yes, well, she was against it because I was in a school production when I was in high school, and I've documented it. She would walk halfway during the interval, leave my high school production, university production. I could see it. It's very dramatic Shakespeare tragedy
Yes.
every time. But over the years, I've realised why my mum did that. And it's because of assimilation and also language.
Yeah.
Like to expect a refugee woman whose her second language is English to sit and watch a production that's purely in English doesn't make sense. And here she's pouncing around like a prostitute. I don't get it. But Miss Saigon was the musical she understood. And she sat through it and understood why I became a performer, so that my mother didn't have to come up on stage to tell her trauma over and over. And so...
But there is a difference between being a performer and being a comedian.
Yes, it is. Yes, well, comedian is you rely on, I need to make you laugh, and that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
But I'm also a trained actor as well. So my being the performer is just to make sure I entertain you in any way possible. I have your attention, your eye contact. And for me, to have my mum sit there and not understand what I was saying, but reflect on her own journey and relate, that for me is why I love performance. It doesn't need to be stand-up, but that's why I love the art so much, because it can speak to us in so many volumes that, you know, book does or news does. It's for me, it's my conversation.
Yeah. You also talk about your Vietnamese heritage in what you do.
Yes.
That is an important part of anybody, that you know, where they come from and that journey that they've had. Have you always felt comfortable with that being a part of what you're sharing with the broader population? Is there an educational component that comes out of that as well?
I think for me, for a long time I was ashamed of being Vietnamese. Especially during the Pauline Hanson 1996 when she came out and said Asians are swarming, and I became very disconnected from being Vietnamese, and that also created a rift with my mother because I didn't cut the language as well. But now in my late 30s and, you know, one day wanting to have a family, I want to give that. I really believe language is such a gift. You know, your motherland gift, language. So over the last 15, 20 years, I've had to relearn and fall in love with my culture that is definitely in my DNA. And that's why I use my stand-up performances to talk about assimilation and also how I identify myself. And like for a very long time, I identified myself as Australian Vietnamese, but now I see myself as Vietnamese Australian, and that's moving. It's always constantly moving. But my niece is 3 years old, and I see this child speaking better Vietnamese than me. It's so wonderful, but also reminds me of what cost it was for me to grow up here in Australia. But now I MC weddings. Well, I try to MC weddings in Vietnamese, but I'm constantly reconnecting with my culture and who I am.
Do you do comedy in a Vietnamese context?
Yes. So Phi and Me is definitely my love language or my love letter to my mum. To say, hey, I appreciate what you've done coming to Australia with nothing, and this web series is for you. In my stand-up, people say that my mother is very alive on stage with me because I play her, and they say she's just there. And for me, I find it's very important that I keep my mother's story alive, because I am that second generation. And I would hate that becomes a lost memory.
Do you have a large Vietnamese community that follows you as well?
Since 2011, yes.
Do you get a different reaction from them compared to others?
For my Vietnamese community, when I go to a pho restaurant, or I used to, this is back in the day, I would have people across the road go da 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 da, which is the sewing machine in the garage. But now that, because I'm in my late 30s, I'm a proud woman.
Yeah.
I have audiences who have never seen live comedy before and sit in the audience, and I do cross the line. Because that's what comedy is.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have to cross the line. We can't be on the edge. We can't just be riding the wave. We have to take a risk. So I'm always fascinated when my audience, especially my Vietnamese Asian audience, sit there going quietly learning from me. And it's been a really wonderful experience. Because, usually I entertain to make you laugh, but now I feel like I've got this educational, probably not appropriate for this video, but yeah, it's morphed and changed. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I find that fascinating how that plays out for you.
Yes.
Because humour has the ability to break down stereotypes and to allow people to better understand individuals from all sorts of different backgrounds.
Yes.
Do you feel that that's happening? Do you feel as a pioneer in breaking down stereotypes?
Especially with the comedy festival in the last from 10 years ago to the last 2 years is very different. Like, I was probably the only 5 Asian comedians performing in 2011, but last year we had a yum cha with 2 tables of Asian Australian or Asian international comedians eating together.
Wow.
And having this relation to each other. Like, we understand, and maybe that's the language that's why our audiences come to see us. Because predominantly in Melbourne, in the comedy festival, my audience are like 60 to 7% Asian Australian.
Wow.
And I am the only female Vietnamese comedian performing in the comedy festival in Melbourne, like with my own show. Like, I know that because I go onto the comedy festival site and put Nguyen in. And it's only a few of us on there. But yeah, it definitely has changed, and I feel really proud that I'm part. Like, I'm happy to pass on the baton for the next generation. And last week I went to my old high school and spoke to them and said, sometimes you can't be spoon-fed. Sometimes you just have to get out there and do it your way. And yeah, I hope that they took that on, because my whole career has been about taking a risk. Like my mother on a boat.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the intergenerational gift that my mother has given me. It's like, she came on a boat with nothing, no idea what was going to happen. And I feel like my whole career has been that too. I've just been going for it. But actually now I just would love to lie down a little bit. I'm just a bit exhausted.
So that storytelling and storytelling based on your family's journey and that experience that you've had is one approach, and having comedy as a part of that helps people to settle in to understanding, as you said, the trauma and then the experience. Do you find, though, that is there an expectation that that's where your comedy is going to come from? Or are there times when you actually just want to spend time talking about American politics, or you want to spend time talking about, the transport system in Melbourne or something? Are there expectations amongst the audience about where your comedy should come from?
No, because I'm very clear what my branding is and who I am. So the great thing about comedy is that there's so many flavours. And that's why there's 600 shows in the Comedy Festival, because you can go to one, like it, and go to the other one, not like it. And you can find your different tastes. For me, my comedy is storytelling. And it comes from my history, but also who I am as a woman now, today, presently. I'm less puns, but much more funny stories. Like, so this year's show is about what do you do after a breakup? And most people would just have a glass of wine, have a big cry, eat ice cream. But for me, I decided to fly to Spain and walk the Camino de Santiago.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And I walked 200 kilometres.
Yeah.
And so this new show is called Sunny Side Up, because what do you do when things hit the fan? You flip them.
Yeah.
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 And I decided the best way to process for me my heart was to go walk.
But that's a very universal type of experience and a relatively universal choice of doing something quite physical and out there. It's not necessarily part of your personal heritage story.
No.
So bringing that to bear, do you think that helps other people? When you said 60% of your audience is of Asian Australian background, do you think part of what you're doing is helping them to bridge that cultural gap that they might feel, as in some things are ordinary and everybody does it and it's okay for you? You don't necessarily have to be linking into your culture all the time.
Yes, and I'm very proud of my culture, but also we're humans living in an Australian society. Some of us play basketball, some of us watch screen, some of us read, some of us travel, some of us have a bubble tea. And so that's where the stereotypes happen, when we get stuck in a lane. And so I guess with my comedy, I try to go, hey, there's so many other lanes we could try out. And, you know, my audiences who do come see my work, sometimes you have to remind them to laugh, because some of my audiences have never seen live before.
Wow.
And so they're so used to watching Friends on the screen or laughing on their screen or TikTok. And I sometimes have to check in, hi, is anyone still there? But that's because they've been programmed to just laugh inside. And so you have to remind them, you can
laugh out loud.
And my tech, I remember last year, my tech was like, they were laughing, but they were laughing in their bodies. You could see them shaking, but you have to tell them, laugh out. And you know, the Western audiences who do see live theatre or musicals or go to sport, they know that, you know, the team needs to hear you cheer. You know, football teams. Like, you imagine it was a silent stadium.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it would. And so I feel so honoured that someone would take a risk to buy a ticket and see a live show and see my work. That's like a very beautiful gift to give me. But yeah, I also do educate them, like, let your voice be heard. And I think with Asians, Australians, when, especially second generation, we've told to sit still, sit in the corner, don't say anything. And I'm telling my audience, say something. Like, make a noise. It's okay. It's okay if it's a wrong noise. Like, I snort. Like, make a noise of some sort and be seen.
So from a social cohesion perspective, comedy, sometimes people can be very concerned about whether or not there's a red line, whether or not, so not necessarily, or maybe it is with comedians as well, but certainly with the general public, they get concerned about, some get concerned, others just jump right in, about whether jokes might be offensive. How would you advise them to think about when or not to either laugh at a joke that potentially has, how can they identify when is a potentially offensive joke and when isn't?
Well, I think it's offensive when you relate to the joke, whether the person been punched down or you've been caught punched up. And for me, my comedy is always punching up. I never make fun of my audience. I want them to come back next year.
Of course.
You want to make the same money. But for me, and I have watched comedians and comedy where I'm like, no, that's not my taste. But they do have an audience. And so you can, you know, the word is you can cancel them, or you can actually just walk away and go, that's not my comedy, that's my taste. And so I just know that the people who do see my work because they know I punch up. And I celebrate. And so I don't get concerned in the whole, and for me as a comedian, I'm also testing myself as well. But yeah, I think when you're doing this kind of work, you need to know who your audiences are.
Absolutely. But there is something about actually coming from a particular culture that perhaps gives you greater license to be able to make things amusing that others that are not from that culture probably should completely avoid. But in being comfortable with doing that, you're educating others about what those experiences are like.
Well, years ago, this is before the Instagram and the Instagram and TikTok world came on. There was this woman in the US who's Latino. She did a nail salon sketch and it went viral, like millions of views. now for a Latino to take on an Asian accent, because, you know, this Vietnamese women, and I go get my nails on a Vietnamese salon. Yeah. They do it well. They're very good. But yeah, this Latino, I think her name's Angela. I've forgotten her last name. She did it so beautifully well. She wasn't mocking. And everyone laughed with her because it wasn't punching down, it was punching up. But now if she was doing it today, it's a very different time, because now we have more voices in the Asian community who can take that role on.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's also era. When did that happen? When, it was all context of time as well. And I think with comedians, you know, we need to reflect as well. You know, back in the 90s, comedy had a certain, because there weren't many Asian voices doing comedy, there was a license to, but now we're saying, no, we want to take our space back now. And so let us take our space.
You've travelled all over the place, and you know, there are comedy festivals offered all over.
Yes.
I'm assuming that all of them are becoming somewhat more, having more diverse comedians or people from different heritages participating in them. Is there more that festivals could be doing to encourage people from all sorts of different backgrounds to actually come and put themselves forward and give it a try?
Well, pay us a salary before we actually do it.
Well,
so wouldn't that be amazing?
Incredibly important.
Yes,
though,
it
isn't
is.
It? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I do believe in whether in the arts or you work in business or you're a sports person, we all need to make a living, and part of that, making that salary or that job allows us to keep doing our work. And I really want to feed that into the arts. That's a very big economy kind of strategy that needs to happen over the years, because there's this mentality that artists are poor. We do this because we love it.
Yeah.
But it's a job. That is the reason why it stops us from getting into the arts. Like my mother, when I was a child, saying, you're not going to make any money. Be a doctor, be a pharmacist, work as an accountant, work in a 9-to-5 job where the pay is constant.
Yeah, she had quite a list.
That's it, yeah. There's more. The expectations have grown from that. But that's what stops second generation young people from migrant families from getting into the arts.
Yeah.
And so how do we change the economy, language of, you don't do this because you love it, you do it because you can make a living from it.
You touch on a really important point that's sort of come up previously in different series, and that is that there is, so as a comedian, people expect you to be doing it because you love it and that you don't care whether you're paid or not, you just have to get out there and do it.
Yes.
But for people who are relatively newly arrived, say, into Australia, there is an element of, I think it's a very strange interpretation of gratitude that essentially says that not only should you be doing it because you love it, but also because you're grateful to be here and we've provided you with this opportunity.
Yes.
And that can be quite stifling in many respects, I think, or it brings out a different type of part of somebody's personality because you're expecting them to show that gratitude.
Yes.
Do you think that has an impact as well on how people participate more broadly in society, I guess?
I think if I speak specifically to the Vietnamese community, and when we think about the politics, like first generation, second generation, we haven't really been part of the Australian politics scene. And only in the last 3 years have we seen women standing up, men standing up in Parliament. We've had the most Asian Australians being voted into leadership roles. And that is because, especially in the Vietnamese community, because of the communist regime, we've been told it's better just to stay in our lane. Don't get into the politics. Just make the money, get our kids into school, and just be quiet.
Yeah.
But I think now we realise we can't be quiet because we're not being seen. So.
And do you think that's more in the second generation and third generation?
I hope that the third is now emerging.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping, so I'm still second generation. But I am hoping that language and the mindset is changing, and we are seeing a change. We're seeing Dai Lee, who's a federal member, who is now standing up and showcasing our community. We have other MPs and councillors in local government.
Local government, Jasmine.
That's it, standing up. And she's so young and youthful.
Isn't she? Anthony, there's so many of them.
So many.
Yeah.
So I think that is definitely changing. But that was the reason why, is that our parents didn't want us to be hurt. They didn't want us to be consumed by what was part of our, generation in Vietnam, that the war and there was a lot of pain and death in that.
Mm-hmm.
So all our parents wanted to do was to come here and just concentrate on, let's get this kid to be successful, and we'll celebrate it.
Keep your head down.
That's it.
Just get on with things.
Yeah.
Make the most of it.
Yeah.
And now you're all out there loud and proud.
Yeah, well, could be louder. We need more Vietnamese Australians in the arts.
Yeah.
Definitely. We need to fit the quota for everything, and we're not just, I think we're doing very well as doctors, because in Springvale, the whole area's got like 10 doctors in the same street.
Well, they were following their parents'
That's
advice.
it. Yeah. But yeah, I do feel that we are moving.
Yeah. What's your view about the future? Are you optimistic about Vietnamese comedians, Vietnamese performers, artists in Australia?
I am, because I think in the last 2-3 years we've seen, especially coming out of COVID, we've seen more scripts that are written by Asian Australians or Asians in internationally. Like we've had more movies that have come out that's celebrated in the Oscars. Mm-hmm. We've seen Asian Australian actors now on the screen more. And then for me, it's very important that we just don't see them on screen, but also behind the screen. Like there's someone working the foundation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are you seeing more and more people getting into the arts in that way, or at least thinking about the arts as a career choice?
Definitely. Yeah. Because we're now showing them that we can actually make money. Yes.
So you think the first generation are feeling a little bit more comfortable with a broader range of career options?
Yeah, I'm doing so well. My mum wants a commission. Oh. She was like, if you're talking about me, I might as well take some commission from it. Yeah. So and also for my mum, it's also rejuvenated her. Like my mother comes to my shows and performs at Lunar New Year festivals, and she's dancing.
Wow.
She's kind of taken on it's been a really beautiful relationship to see my mum. She never says I'm proud of you, but I know she is. Yeah. Because there'll be moments where at home I see her watch the web series in her own time or share with her friends. And so I know that that's there.
Yeah. But you've sort of revealed a path forward for her that's actually explaining more about what opportunities are available in Australia that maybe she can touch on if she wasn't actually able to. Do you think she would have been a performer had she had the option?
Oh, I think
herself.
Well, my mum did a Mother of the Bride speech at my sister's wedding. Oh. And I had a speech, everyone had a speech, and everyone said my mum had the funniest speech of the night.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then we all went, well, that's our mother. And that's where we get it from. My mum improvised the whole speech, made everyone laugh. It was so beautiful because she was in her body, and she was alive in her body. Yeah. And she had this excuse, I don't speak English. Yeah. But the whole speech for 5 minutes was English.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so she'd been using that line for the last 38 years.
Now, do you feel any pressure to actually be funny every time people see you or meet you? Do you? They just assume you're going to make them laugh.
Yes, which is very detrimental when you're on the dating scene. So someone says, "Make me laugh," and you're like,
wow,
yeah," and you say, "Well, you have to pay me." Like everyone else. Yes. No, but I think over the years, from being that primary school kid who made people laugh because I needed to fit in, I know that humour is a skill that I have now. Yeah. But it's not everything. And so that's why in my comedy, there's heart and people travel. It's a hero's journey, I guess. And I think when you do watch comedy, you don't want to laugh for 50 minutes straight because sometimes you need to pause and breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, that's why Shakespeare is so great, because you have a bit of tragedy and then you have a bit of humour. You move ebbs and flows.
Well, it's what you mentioned right at the beginning about the skill that you've got as a performer.
Yes.
Is being able to help people move through that process.
That's it.
Through 50 minutes that they're going to spend with you. So it's incredibly important.
But also another job that I do that I'm very grateful for is I'm also a clown doctor at the Royal Children's.
Oh my.
Yeah. So this superhero thing that I had when I was a child, I now just perform to one child, and that is enough for me.
Yeah.
So I realised that I'm not, and I'll be very honest, it was the fame. It was to prove my mum that I could make money and be famous and be in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. But now it's converted to joy. So what can I give to you, this child?
Yeah.
And you know, we work so I work for the Humour Foundation, so we work in different departments of the Royal Children's, and one of the big ones is the burns unit.
Yeah.
And so while the doctors are changing the bandages,
oh wow, you're distracting
the child, so the doctors and nurses can do their job quickly.
Yeah.
But this child is in so much pain, but all I've got to make sure is they are watching me while I do fart sounds and bump into walls. And so I realised that in that there is, you know, that is tragedy in that, when you have to help someone through their pain. And so that's what drives me.
But this demonstrates how multi-talented you are.
Oh, yeah.
Because comedy at the Comedy Festival for a bunch of adults is very different to trying to make humour for young children who are going through pain at the same time.
And they will tell you the truth. If they're not in the mood, they will sit there and not give you anything.
Yeah.
And you have to accept that. And my skill is to go, okay, what do I have in my pocket today? I've got a pig that squeaks. I've got a poo, like anything. I've got dad jokes, because dad loved dad jokes and they're so lame.
Yeah.
So this
has really stretched you, though. I mean, you've taken comedy and moved it in all sorts of different directions.
I've had to, because I feel like I've had to grow. Yes.
Yeah.
I could have been an actor for 19, I could have been a comedian for 19 years, but I feel, I'm not saying it's boring, but I feel like I need to keep evolving in my work. And a child will always keep me evolving.
So do you think opportunities have they come across to you, or have you had to make them?
I've had to make them, definitely. Fee and Me was self-made.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely, I could write a book about it, which I will. But
so what are the talents that you need in order to make those opportunities happen?
A huge belief in yourself.
Yeah.
Community is so important. Like, Fee and Me would not be where we are if we hadn't raised $28,000 by crowdfunding, and by raising that money, like the community raising money. Screen Australia was like, oh, well, if they've got backing, we'll give them another $52,000.
Yeah.
And then, you know, having people watch our web series, Community, again.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that is the next stage for us to make this TV show that has been a 13-year journey.
Yeah.
So community is crucial. And that's why I have to make my work, because I need my community to be seen, so they can give me money to do the work I need to do, so that the next generation will see me do the work, so that they will be inspired to do it. So it's a full continuing cycle, like, you know, like, keep supporting art. Buy a ticket to see a show, sit in the audience, because you're actually getting the performer to go, I've sold some tickets today, I think I'll do a show next year.
Yeah.
And so it keeps that movement happening, that flow continuing.
It really is, and this is probably the final point, is such a lot of this is the strengths-based approach. It's actually about demonstrating how much we value the skills and talents that everybody brings to Australia to make it a better place going forward. And all of that contributes to this more cohesive society, because everybody knows that they've got something that they can contribute, somewhere they can participate, something that makes them feel like they belong here.
Yeah.
And do you still feel that way? Is that and do you think your mum feels that way now?
My mum is a very independent woman, so she belongs to herself.
Excellent.
Yes. But for me, I think that's why the artistry still drives me, because I'm still seeking that belonging. And you know, we talked about language before and community. Like, for me, that's why I do what I do and still talk about my culture in my work, being a Vietnamese Australian woman.
Yeah.
And so I feel that that's still ingrained in me to keep doing the work that I'm doing.
Yeah.
Whether it be humour, clown doctoring, or having a conversation with you. Yeah.
Well, congratulations, because I just think I think of it a bit like the Star Wars type thing,
Yes.
you know, where you start to step out and you don't know whether or not anything's going to be there, but the drawbridge or whatever it is just keeps forming
Yes.
as you step out. And I just feel as though that's what you're doing, is you're putting one step forward and suddenly there is something there
Yes.
that you can actually walk on.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm glad that it still has kept popping up, because very grateful that it has.
Oh, well done. And thank you so much. Thank you for being a part of this session.
No, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to our Voices of Australia podcast. For more episodes like this one, you can visit the Scanlon Institute website at scanloninstitute, or one word, .org.au.